This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so this is where we are. Yesterday, we spoke about something known as a SQL Server, an Azure SQL Server, and how do you connect something called as an Azure Web App to something known as a SQL Server out here. And today, I have a bit of different requirement out here. So I am a global website. Okay, so let's say I am Facebook.com. So this is the web application which Facebook.com is using to host their cloud or to host their code. So whenever you just hit this particular or whenever a user just visits this particular application out here, they see a page called facebook.com. That's what I mean that the code is hosted out of this particular application. Now, since I am a global website, now I am globally available, meaning I have a global footprint. Meaning I'm present in every country. A lot of people actually use this particular website for social media streaming and everything, right? So I have a global footprint, meaning I'm present across the globe, and I have users visiting this particular website from different parts of the world, from different places of the world, different parts of the world, and etc. Now, let's imagine that there are three such web applications. Let's say this is facebook.com, this is facebook.eu, Europe, facebook.eu, and we have another website. Same code, everything is same, but this is Facebook dot, let's say Australia. Okay, so Facebook Australia. So I'm just imagining that Facebook has three different servers. So right now in my model, in my imagination, I'm just telling that Facebook has three different websites that are hosted three different places of the world, and the same code is actually being hosted. And my requirement is something like that. In order to make sure that my website is globally available, let's say I have different users. I'm just pointing out three users right now. Now, this user, let's say, is from the US. So I need to make sure that this user is always and always diverted to the closest available server. And ideally, the closest available server or the closest available web app in his case will be something running in the United States, which is this one. And a user who's visiting this website from a region called Europe should most likely be diverted to this website only because this is a website that is running from Europe, and same goes to Australia. So I need to make sure that I set up something like this. I need to make sure that I'll reduce something known as latency. First thing, my or the goal that I want to achieve is reducing latency in the connections. Meaning, if the US or let's say if the person from US were to be diverted not to the closest server, but let's say a server in Europe, he'll take much more time, right? Because physically he's far away from Europe than US. So the request is going to take some time. So the latency is going to be a little bit more. So my goal is to reduce this latency. My goal is to make sure that I cut down the latency. So I need to achieve something like this. Secondly, I need a high available application, a highly available application. Meaning, what do I mean by this? Is that just in case if this website that is there in the US. If this website goes down, meaning because of some reason the website is going down, I'm trying to troubleshoot it and etc. But when the website is down, I don't want this user to be diverted to this website. I don't want this to happen. Usually, if the website is up, yes, I certainly want it to happen to reduce the latency. But I'm also worried about, or I'm also concerned about something called as high availability. I need all my applications to be highly available. So whenever this website is down, let's say this website is not available right now, that is running from the US because there is some patching going on or there's some issue basically with this application. This user has to now be diverted to the closest available server, either Europe or Australia, the closest and the best available server. So none of my users have to get impacted or should get impacted if my applications were to go down. These are the two conditions on which I'm trying to operate on. So since I'm facebook.com, I'm globally available. I need to make sure to reduce the latency. Two, I need to make sure that my applications are highly available, meaning even if one application were to go down, like let's say United States, the application has gone down, all these users from the United States should not be impacted. Now, we did something similar, right? I mean, we did something similar with virtual machines, guys. So we had multiple virtual machines and we used some kind of a technology in order to make sure that the traffic is diverted and the load is distributed amongst the available virtual machines out there. So what kind of a technology did we use there, guys? Like, can anyone recollect it? Can anyone tell me what did we use there?
Load runner, sir.
Exactly, we used a load balancer. So my question is that can I use the same load balancing solution out here? So let me go here. Let me say load balancer, and I'll just create a load balancer for. I'm not creating the complete load balancer. I just want to see if there is an option to go ahead and add something like a backend pool. So let me go ahead. Let's say create a new resource group out here. I'll say demo RG, and let's say this is load balancer. Yeah, something like this. All this is good enough. I'll say next. I'll say IP configuration is. I'll still go ahead and give some IP random IP configuration out here. Thing like random IP. Not to create. I'm just giving some random names out here, and let's try to add some backend pools out here. So in the backend pool, if you look at this thing, if you look at, let's say, if I need to add it in the backend pool, it's telling me that, you know what, I need something called as a virtual network out here. It's telling I need something known as a virtual network. So if I go here, I do not have any virtual networks at all because by default, Azure App Services are publicly available resources in nature. These are public, these are websites that once you put your code there, anyone can go ahead in the entire world. They can take the URL, they will be able to access this website. So by default, these are or these come with something called as a public IP, and nowhere when you create an app service, it will ask you for something called as virtual network. Nowhere it is going to ask you this. So when you created an app service, did you anytime see it asking for a virtual network out there, guys? Anyone? So did you all get my question? So when you all create, yeah, nowhere it is asking you, right? So it's a publicly available resource. That's what I'm trying to say. So let me go ahead create a resource out here, and let me say this is, according to our diagram. I'll go ahead and create an application in ECS firstly. I'll just create a resource group and I'm creating an application in the East US region. And let me go here inside the resource group and let me create a web application out here. So I'll just say this is East US web application to ABC000. So in some unique name out here, I'll just take ASP.NET v4.8. I'll say this is East US and I'll say this is plan East US. This is deployment, I'll just say monitoring and I'll just disable my monitoring for now. And I'll just go ahead and create the application in this particular resource or in this particular region. I'll say finally review and create. So I'm just creating a web application. So I'm provisioning this particular web application that I believe it's running from running from US. But even though I created, the issue with this is firstly that the load balancer will only accept applications that are running from North Europe because load balancers are again regional devices in nature. So you could argue that what if we put a global load balancing solution out here and add regional load balancers to them? I can do that. But again, if I would want or if I would like to add a regional load balancer also, if I were to change the location to East US, I still will not be able to get it. The reason being the backend pool. In the backend pool section, I am still asked for a virtual network, which is not present here. You do not have a virtual network at all. So even if I add it in East US, so let's say East US IP, and if I were to go into the backend pools, and if I try adding something inside the backend pool, it still says there is nothing available because ideally there is no virtual network that got created when you went ahead and created a web application. But I still want to achieve this. So what I'm trying to tell you is that a load balancer may not be the right solution for an Azure PaaS service. For a virtual machine, yes, load balancer is the best available solution out there. You also have something called application gateway. We'll look into that. But load balancer is one of the solutions that is available for a virtual machine when you're trying to load balance the applications. But when you talk about Azure PaaS services like Azure Web Apps, which do not come with, let's say, a virtual network, there is some other device that will help you achieve all these things. And that is called as a traffic manager in Azure. That's where we are coming to, which is our today's concept, which is called Azure Traffic Manager. Now, unlike load balancer, which works on a logic called round robin, meaning load balancer will try to distribute the load amongst the available virtual machines in an alternative fashion, meaning the first request will go to the first virtual machine, second will go to the second, third will again come to the first, and etc. So we looked at it, right? It'll try to distribute your entire load in an altering fashion. But when I introduce something called as a traffic manager works on something called as methodology. Very important, methodology. Meaning it will ask you how do you want to divert your traffic? Like what is the method that I need to follow to divert my traffic? And by default, there are a couple of methods that are available called priority, performance, weighted, geographic, subnet, and multi-value. Meaning, what are these? What exactly is a traffic manager? How do you then create it and etc.? Let's see that. Let's get into it and let's understand each and everything about the traffic manager, and let's see how you can manage your applications that are running from different regions using a traffic manager. This means that traffic manager, unlike a load balancer, is a global solution, meaning it doesn't really worry where the applications are running. It doesn't really concern, it's not really concerned about where the applications are actually running from. It will be available globally. There is no location to the traffic manager. So traffic manager is a globally available resource to which you can add all your websites that are running in different regions. There is no restriction as such, and it will be able to manage all of these things at the same time. So let's understand that. So for now, I have a website that is running from US. I'll just go ahead create two different resource groups or one different resource group again for, let's say, a location called North Europe. I'll just go ahead create a North Europe web app. So I'll say it is North Europe. Review and create this out, and let me go ahead and provision a resource in a location called North Europe. So I'll say web app, create this one, and I'll say it is North Europe application to ABC000. So just a name here. I'm just taking the same configuration, and I will say this is North Europe, and I'll say this is Plan North Europe. Next deployment, I'll disable this monitoring, I'll disable this out, I'll review and create my websites. Now, one thing is that both the Azure websites that I create, the East US and the North Europe, by default will come with a HTML page. Meaning, if I just browse this application, if I just hit on the browse application out here, guys, are you able to still hear me? Am I audible still? Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yes.
I thought I lost you. Okay, fine. So by default, the web application is going to come with something like this. It says, "Hey, app service developers, your app is running. Take time to deploy your code and etc." Even the North Europe website is going to come with this same page out here, but the URL is different. So right now it is North Europe and etc. This is East US and etc. And it's the same page. Now, in order for this demo to be successful, or in order for me to go ahead and display this particular demo, I need somehow, or I rather need some differentiation between my Europe and the US websites, like on the code wise, or let's say some differentiation. I just need a very basic differentiation so that I can test out this particular application and understand this. Meaning, can I edit this particular HTML page? Because this is a HTML page that is like running in the backend. This is something which Azure is managing or Microsoft is managing. Until and unless I go ahead and deploy my own code, I will get displayed this particular web application out here. So I can open up my Visual Studio, create a new code that will again take about 10 minutes and deploy it out. But there is one more advantage that you get with the app services is that I have been telling that you cannot go ahead and access something called as the backend virtual machine. So when we started with our app service journey, we said that app services look something like this, and there is something known as a backend virtual machine that is running in, which you don't have access to. But right now, I'll just modify my statement a bit and I'll say you have limited access to it. Like you can go into the backend, look at a couple of things, kind of deal with a couple of things, and etc. You have a limited amount of access here. So, what kind of an access do you have? Let's look into that. So, I just want to go and want to edit this page that is in the backend, meaning this HTML page is running from this virtual machine that is there in the backend, and the app service is just rendering the same thing out here. So what I'll do here is that in the settings, I'll just type advanced. I'll go into the advanced tools. I'll say go. This is something that I'm doing for the East US application. Now, these are called advanced tools, or we also call this as Kudu console. KUDU, Kudu. This is what the name is. What exactly this is that this is a pure management tool which will help you to have a limited amount of access on the virtual machine that is running on the backend. So once I'm here, what I'll do is I have a couple of options here and I'll go into something known as debug console. So let me just click on debug console and I have two options to interact with it. One is CMD, the other is PowerShell. You can select anything, doesn't really matter. And once I'm into the debug console, I'll go into something called site and I have something called www root folder, right? This is the folder which will hold all my code. And I have something called hosting start.html by default, because of which you're able to see this page. You're able to see this page because of this particular file called hosting start.html. Now, what if I take this page and go into a notepad and probably look at this? So it's a HTML body. It's like the entire HTML body that's getting displayed out here with different buttons, with different styles and etc. And it's telling me a lot of things like, you know what, welcome to welcome to the app service. So Microsoft Azure App Service, welcome, because this is what it's telling. It's like Microsoft Azure App Service and welcome and etc. Microsoft Azure, hey developers and all that stuff. So what I'll do is to make sure that I customize it. Just take everything out. I'll just start writing my own HTML content and I'll just say H1 heading 1. I'll say this is an app service running from East US. So I am just creating a very simple HTML content. I'm not doing anything. So I'll just copy this out, go into this particular page, remove everything, paste my own content. I'll say save. And once I save it, I'll just go ahead and restart the application. And once the application is restarted, it will take about 5 seconds for the application to come up. And after a while, if you kind of refresh this out, it says this is an app service running from East US, meaning my changes that I've done in this particular file inside a root, inside a folder called www root, meaning the root folder, these changes are now getting reflected on the front end application. So I have done this change only to differentiate between both of my applications, meaning one application is running from North Europe and the one application is running from East US. So in order to make a small differentiation, I've made this change. I'll also do the same thing with North Europe. So I'll again go to the advanced tools of the North Europe. I'll say go to the Kudu console and I'll just make the same editing. But this time around, I'll say this is North Europe. So I'm just making this particular change out here. So I'll go into debug console, go into CMD, and again go into something called site, into root, into hosting.html, and I'll just save. Save, and then I'll come here, I'll restart my application. So I restarted my application successfully, and after a couple of seconds, let's see if this is running. So this now says that this is North Europe, and if I browse this, this is saying this is East US. So I am able to successfully differentiate between both of the servers right now. Now is the time where I'll just go ahead and bring into the scene something called as a traffic manager, so that I can manage both the websites that are running in two different locations. So I'll come here and I will say traffic manager profiles, and I am again coming back into the same page wherein I have load balancer, friend door, application gateway, and something known as a traffic manager. What I'll do is that I'll create a traffic manager profile right now, and the creation is very simple. You do not, it's not so complicated as a load balancer, because load balancer again is something known as an infrastructure as a service, whereas traffic manager out here is a platform as a service, which is like much more simpler. So I'll say this is test profile first, because since this is our first profile that I'm creating, I'll say test profile first, and it's now telling that okay, fine, it is test profile first dot Azure traffic or dot traffic managers dot net. So it's just adding something known as a fully qualified domain name. This is the URL, which will now become very important. We'll understand how it becomes important and etc. And now it's asking very importantly something called as the methodology, or something known as the routing method. It's telling how exactly do you want to manage your traffic, using what kind of a logic do you want to manage your traffic out here. And there are multiple things out here. As I said, there's performance weighted priority, geographic, sub, and multi-value. So in order to understand this a bit further, that what happens if I go for something known as a performance, let's go and just look at the documentation for a second. And I'll say traffic manager routing method Azure, and this is the link to the documentation, guys. I'll send the same link in the chat as well, and I would want you all to just give it a read. Right now we are at traffic manager profiles, and I am interested to look into one kind of a routing methodology called performance, because this is what it's being displayed there, and I want to understand what exactly will I get here. So let's go to performance, and it's saying that deploying endpoints in two or more locations across the globe can improve your responsiveness of the application. With the performance traffic routing method, you can route the traffic to a location that is closest to you, meaning something like this. You have multiple websites out here. For example, in our case, I have a North Europe, I have an East US, and etc. I have a North Europe, I have an East US, and so on and so forth. And if I am a user coming from, let's say, North Europe, my browser is giving a query to the website, or that website is now, or my browser is giving a query to the internet, sorry, and this internet is doing something known as a DNS search, and I am getting diverted into the traffic manager, and the traffic manager will now calculate my latency. This is what the traffic manager is actually doing. The traffic manager is telling, you know what, the user from North Europe, he's here, and now calculate the time for which each and every server will take to respond to me. So for example, in this case, they are taking something called West US, but normally in my case, North Europe will have the least time. Now here MS is nothing but milliseconds. So it will now start diverting me to the nearest available profile, or to the nearest available server. In my case, I am from North Europe. and I will go into something known as the North Europe server. If you come from East US and now the traffic manager will again calculate what is the latency in the same way the diagram is showing you, and it is now diverting you to the server that is present in US. So the best performing, meaning the closest available server, which is also the least latency server that is available out there. That is what performance actually gives you. So I'll just put in performance and I'll just say traffic manager RG. This is the name of the RG that I want to create. And this is the location of the RG. I mean, this is just the location of the resource group, not the location of the traffic manager. That's the reason it's telling what is the location of your resource group. So I'll just give any location out here and I'll say create. So I'm just creating something called as a traffic manager profile out here. And once this is created, let's go ahead and see what we can do with it. And I am creating this profile in a routing methodology called performance. This is important to note, guys. So any questions till here, guys? Anything till here? Anyone till here? Is everyone able to follow this? Any issues with this? Any questions till here, guys? Anyone? Anything? Is anyone not following, guys? Please do let me know. Okay. So moving forward, I have my profile got created. So I have the traffic manager profile that got created right now. And what I'll be doing first, what I'll be doing the very first thing is that I'll go ahead and add something called as the endpoint. Endpoints here is nothing but the backend pool or the backend pool concept in the load balancing solution. So it's just asking what are the servers that I need to manage. So I'll just go into endpoint and I'll say add an endpoint. And in here, I can describe the type of an endpoint, whether it's Azure external nested. We'll talk what about nested, but if it's is in Azure, it's just expecting that the resources are in Azure. Just in case, let's say you have a virtual machine that is running on AWS, you can also configure or you can also basically have it load balance using the Azure Traffic Manager. So there is no restriction that your resources have to be in Azure. Your resources can be in different clouds as well, and you can use the Traffic Manager service in order to manage them. Now, in my case, my resources are in Azure only because I want to handle or I want to manage the traffic going to these two to these two application services. So I'll say this is endpoint one east US. This is what I'm telling. And I'm saying the target source or the target resource type is an app service. And I'll select the East US app service out here and I'll say add. So now I am adding the endpoint out here. I'm just telling that which endpoint is my resource sitting in, and I'm just going ahead and adding the one particular server out here called East US. Secondly, I'll do the same thing. I'll say it's Azure endpoint. Now I'll say it is endpoint 2. I'll say North Europe. And I'll say again this is app service that is running out of Azure. North Europe app service, and I'll say add. So I'm adding two different endpoints out here. And now the question for you all guys is that I have multiple URLs out here for the application. I have a URL for this application, which is URL that is east to something like this. So I have this URL. I have a URL for the North Europe application also. So if I go into the North Europe application, I'll also get a URL here. So which URL should you think, or which URL do you think should I give to my users? Should it be North Europe or should it be East US? Anyone, any guesses here? Anyone, guys? Just need some input from your end.
East US.
Okay, so if I give East US to this person and if I also give East US to this person, then how am I reducing the latency and how am I making sure that the application is highly available? Meaning, if East US is going down, then how will I divert them to North Europe? Anyone, guys? Anything else? Any inputs else? So is it East US or
Based upon the load balancing, sir.
based upon the load balancing, or in our case, it is a traffic manager right now?
Yeah, yeah.
I will give the URL of the traffic manager, not the load, no, I mean, not the East US or North Europe. I will just give them one URL. So everyone, irrespective of which region are you, you just have one URL out here, which is called http.trafficmanagerprofile.net. This is the sorry, this is the URL you will be using to reach out to my applications. So let's do one thing. Let's use this URL here. Let's go inside the traffic manager. Let me have this here. Let's go hit the traffic manager and let's try to load it. And as and when I do it, it's giving me an error telling that 404 website is not available, site not found, client cache is still pointing to the domain old IP address and all that stuff. Can anyone tell me what did I miss on looking at the error? Because these are the errors that we deal on a real-time environment. So looking at the errors or looking at the error that you see out here on the screen, can anyone tell me what I may be missing on, what I should kind of change and everything? Anyone?
We have not connected this traffic manager IP to those
Hmm.
web servers.
Not connected the traffic manager IP to those web servers like the way we do it in, let's say, load balancing, right? Like load balancer, when we connect a load balancer to our virtual machines, the IPs get changed. But I don't see any IP here. Like I don't really see, I don't kind of see where my IP really is, and the URL is still not changed. Now, one question did you all ask me, or did anyone have, is that the plan that I'm on, which is F1, does it support traffic managers? Because when we were creating custom auto scales and etc., I said that the plan should also support the auto scaling. And in my case, both of the virtual or both of the app services are running out of a plan called F1, which doesn't have a lot of features. So I'll go to D1, which has a feature called custom domains. I don't even need this. I'll go to something called B1, which has something called manual scaling. I'll come to S1. Do you find a feature called traffic manager? Meaning your application should at least be in a plan called S1 to go ahead and make sure that you can attach a traffic manager to it. Now, before I go ahead and scale it up, let me come down one quick real time and let me go into something called domains out here, custom domains. You can also add your own custom domain like the way we did for the virtual machines. And for now, it's just saying that the subscription is not eligible to purchase app service domains and all, a lot of stuff out here, but it's not showing me any domain as such. So what I'll do firstly is I'll just go ahead and scale my application up. So I'll just go into scale. I'll say scale up app service plan, and I will scale my application up to an app service plan that supports traffic managers, which is in my case S1. I'll say apply. So I'll just apply this out and let's give it a second. So this is done. Let's refresh our application and let's come down and look at something called as custom domains right now. If I come down to custom domains, do you automatically see that I have a domain by default which is handled by Microsoft, which is called North Europe Web Application to abc.azurewebsites.net, which is the same URL that I hit here. And I have another domain added. Very importantly, this is the URL of the traffic manager. This is how the traffic manager understands what are the servers that are running in the backend. The traffic manager URL is added as a custom domain into the web application. This is very important, guys. So if I just scale it up, I have the traffic manager that got added as a custom domain to the North Europe web application. So I'll apply the similar concept to the East US server also. So I'll go into the East US application here. I will now go into the scale up option, and I'll just go into the production tier, and I'll go into S1 and I'll say apply. And once I do this, it'll just take like less than a minute and it'll be scaled up. And once I scale it up, let me go into something known as custom domains out here. And I see the traffic manager that is added right now, meaning the traffic manager looks like it's working. I have done everything from my end. So now if I go into the traffic manager profile and just refresh the screen, I now see something called as monitoring status, and it says both the websites are online, meaning they are healthy, I'm good to manage them and etc. Now the question for you all guys is that if I hit this URL, where do you think, or which server do you think that the traffic manager should divert me? I have two servers right now in the architecture, one in the United States, the other in the Europe. So which server do you think that the traffic manager will divert me to, provided I have configured the traffic manager in something called performance traffic routing methodology? So what do you think about this, guys?
Europe.
Europe, why Europe?
Whichever is near. Whichever is near.
Whichever is near, whichever is fastest performing. And in my case,
East.
yes, you are right. No, in my case, it is Europe. I am close to Europe than US. Geographically, I am close to Europe. So someone said it is Europe. It is absolutely correct. I from India, working out of a location like South India, I am close geographically to Europe than US, because Europe comes first and then US comes next. So I am geographically close to that particular location. So let me test it out. This is an app server running from North Europe. I am geographically very close to Europe than to US. That's the reason it's able to identify that what the server in North Europe is the closest one. But in case the North Europe server is going down, meaning I'll just go ahead and stop the server. Then how will the traffic manager identify the server is no longer available? So if I just do a refresh out here, do you see automatically it understood that North Europe server is actually going down? It went down. So there is no North Europe right now. And no matter in which location from I come from, if I refresh my screen, since the browser has cached my particular website, it's just giving you this particular error. But if I now kind of refresh this out, yes, it still says it stopped and etc. Now this will take somewhere around 2 to 3 minutes of time in order to make sure that your traffic is being diverted to the nearest available website, which is like East US in my case. But my question here is that how will my traffic manager, or how is my traffic manager really able to identify that this server is going down? Because in load balancer, what we did is that we configured something known as a health probe. In traffic manager, you don't have to configure a health probe. It is by default configured for you. So if you look at this, you have something known as a probing interval of 30 seconds. It says tolerated number of failures is 3. Probe timeout is 10 seconds, meaning for every 30 seconds, I'll try to see whether the servers are available or not. And if there is it's not available, then I'll make sure to mark that server as stopped. And since I'm working on a free trail account, it might take some time in order for this traffic manager to give me a proper output. Still saying it is stopped because I have a lot of browser cache that I have done out here, and my browser is caching all these things out. It will take somewhere around 5 to 6 minutes for my browser to understand that this cache is no longer available and to kind of swipe that out. And then I will be diverted to a server location called East US, because East US right now is the application which is actually running. So if I just do a refresh here, it's running, but this application is stopped. My browser is still taking me to that particular application, and it will take some time in order for my browser to change the DNS and all that stuff. So this is how traffic managers actually work, guys. And very importantly, I am routing the traffic in a methodology called performance. Any quick questions here? Any questions here? Anyone? Anything till here?
Uh, Hi, Kiran.
Yeah.
Ramesh here.
So the routing method will be usually performance or
It depends upon what you want to try to achieve. In my case, I am saying that okay, fine, I want to go ahead and let's say divert my traffic to the closest available server. But what if my architecture is something like no matter where the user is coming from, I want to divert him to the East US website. That is my primary server. North Europe is a secondary server, just in case East US goes down. North Europe is a backup server. In that case, performance really won't work here. You need to change the configuration to something like priority, wherein you can assign numbers to your endpoints starting from 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. Like that is called as rank or assign or priority number. So if I now go into the endpoints out here, now I have an assignment that is automatically done. East US is sitting at a priority of 1. North Europe is sitting at a priority of 2. You can also change this by just going into the endpoint and change the priority value out here. So priority value can be changed as just a number, but your traffic will always and always be diverted to the least priority server. In my case, priority 1 is the least priority, which is East US. So it depends upon what you're trying to achieve out here. Depending upon that, we will change the performance methods, or we will change the routing methods. And if you want to achieve something like, what the user should be diverted to the closest server, then it is, let's say, performance. If, let's say, you want always the user to be diverted to East US, then you need to basically configure it in something like priority. Does that answer your question,
okay.
Shiva?
Yeah. And this can be changed at any time, right? No
This
matter.
can be changed at any time, no matter. You can change it at any given time, any given point in time.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. Thank you.
Someone else had a question.
Yeah, Kiran, can we use the custom domain name instead of trafficmanager.net? Like we can
Mhm.
create in a GoDaddy, like website.com, our own
Y-
website.com
Yes,
namings.
you can definitely do that. You can create your own custom domains, and you can attach that custom domain and point it to the traffic test traffic manager.net. You can point it out to that. You can do something known as a CNAME mapping to it. And since I am on a free trial subscription, I do not have an option to change it out, but this free trial will get expired in one day, and I'll change my subscription to a pay as you go, and probably I can show how you can map it and everything. But yes, you can, I mean, a CNAME mapping is supported here, meaning you can attach a custom domain to it and it will work. So instead of, let's say, traffic manager.net and etc., you can have your own domain name out here. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks, Kiran.
Any more questions, guys? So the assignment that I have for y'all is that I have explained something known as priority and performance. I want you all to read about geographic and multi-value. Geographic and weighted. Weighted and geographic is the two things that I want you all to read. Multi-value and subnet, these are two things that we don't usually use. These are barely used. So if you want to just give it a read, there's no harm in that. You can just go ahead and just give it a read out here to understand what it is. But most importantly, please try out performance. Please change it to priority. See how is it working. And please make sure to read about weighted, and please make sure to read about geographic. These are the two things that I want you all to read. And please let me please let me know if you have any questions there. So this, let's see, our traffic manager profile. Let's go to the profile and let's test it out one quick time. And it's now diverting to the east US. Ideally, even in the performance routing methodology, it should divert to the east US. But my browser cache and all those things are actually coming into picture, and now the cache looks like it's refreshed, and now it's taking me to the east US server always. So this is how the traffic manager is going to work, guys. It's an intelligent solution based upon the user input, whether the routing methodologies, performance, priority, and etc. The traffic will get diverted accordingly. So the very important thing that we configure from our end is to understand what is the weighting or what is the routing methodology, what kind of a routing methodology applies to our solutions, and then give the best suited or give the best solution up there. So this is our duty. So please make sure to read this documentation that I've posted. Please go through it and understand what are the routing methodologies, so that you will better be able to, you'll be in a better position to design the application out there. So any questions before we close for today, guys? Anyone, anything?
So routing methodology based upon the time will be more frequent than the load.
So traffic manager, we don't really consider the load. Traffic manager, we will consider what is the traffic, like where the traffic is coming from. If there is a lot of traffic that is coming from US and there is a very little amount of traffic that is coming from elsewhere, I'm happy to go ahead and configure my traffic manager in a priority method, because always I want to go ahead and hit the East US server because that's the best performing server in my case. So it's not the load in this way. It's the what do you say? It's the traffic basically, which plays a very important priority in configuring the traffic manager out there.
Thank you.
Anything else, guys? Okay, so that's it from mine, guys. And one quick notice out here is that from tomorrow is where we are going into Azure DevOps. So until now, we've been discussing about the concepts of Azure, and this is a time where you should, or where you can consider going ahead and rolling out your profiles, rolling out your resumes in different websites like Naukri, Monster, etc. We are good with Azure till now. Like there are still some more services that we need to cover in Azure, which we'll cover along with DevOps. But until now, we are like good with services, so you can go ahead and start rolling out your resumes. And starting tomorrow, we'll start with DevOps. We'll understand what Azure DevOps is. We'll understand different concepts of Azure DevOps. So from tomorrow, I need somewhere around 15 to 20 classes in order to cover the entire DevOps kind of portion. So please make sure to attend these classes, because every class is interconnected to each other. So even if you miss one and don't follow the video, it will kind of go over your head. So please make sure to attend these classes on a regular basis, and I'll always be here to help you out. So that's my request, guys, and thank you for today. That's it from my end, and I'll meet you tomorrow at the same time, and we'll start with DevOps tomorrow. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.